So I mentioned gremlins when I was introducing the Suzuki, and it seems that Malls overheard that and has thrown all of the electric gremlins back at me that I kind of kept patching and never really figuring out. So for some reason, the starter solenoid, I believe, is either faulty, which I'm hoping is not the case, or the wiring harness that had so many little patches and various things that had been done to it by myself and by other people over the years is faulty somewhere. So I'm hoping it's that one, because my multimeter does not read ohm resistance properly, which means testing to see if the solenoid is good is difficult, and I don't want to run out and buy a new multimeter today. I want to take some time to research a really good one and make sure that that's what I'm getting again. There's lots of cheap ones out there, and they're cheap for a reason. I don't want to cheap out again. I want to get a decent one, and I don't want to go broke doing it. So find somewhere in the middle. Long story short though, where we're at is I've redone the entire wiring harness. I'll put some footage of that in here. I didn't really record myself doing it all that much, but it is done. So the old wiring harness is still in place, but the spare wiring harness that was originally going to use and still probably use to use as a model to rewire a brand new one with new wires, which is that stuff up there. It's a project I again keep putting off. That one is in place. I believe everything is hooked up properly. So the only thing I have to do now is I had modified the ignition switch, or the cables coming from the ignition switch, to have an additional switch that needs to be turned on in order to start the bike. When I'm in the middle of nowhere, it just makes me feel a little bit safer, because not everyone's going to know that they're going to need to flip that additional switch in addition to turning the key or whatever it is that they think they need to do to try and take off with my bike. So it's just an extra safety precaution and like theft precaution on my part, in case I ever left the keys with the bike when I walked away from it for a few minutes. That said, it's modified on the ignition switch side, so I need to wire up another one of these so that I can bypass. Actually, you know what? Totally forgot I had these little key things that are used for messing with stuff like this, but I should just be able to bridge the connection with one of these. So I'm going to try that first, and then we'll see if Moles actually starts up, or if one, I've possibly forgotten something in wiring the new wiring harness, or two, if it really is the starter solenoid that is bad. And then it's going to be a different issue of me trying to figure out a starting solenoid that I can get in time to replace and that will work. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that if this works and everything goes the way it's supposed to, then it shows that it's the wiring harness and not the solenoid. And then I have a month before my next scheduled motorcycle test to get my license back, and Malls will be ready for that. So fingers crossed, I'll go out and do that last little step, and then we will see what happens. Oh, I hear it. So it makes me wonder if the battery is just too dead. This does still work for voltage. It's just the amperage and the ohm resistance that doesn't really seem to function properly. So we're down to 8 volts. Yeah. Shit. Okay, well, we're back for round 2 of trying to see if this new wiring harness is the solution that we were looking for. So the battery has been on the trickle charger all night. It's definitely registering good to go. Fingers crossed, we hook this thing up and it starts. Let's see what happens. First step is coffee. Please don't judge me too harshly for this. The new fuses that I've ordered don't arrive until tomorrow, so no one's gonna like what I'm about to do. Just installing my 1000 amp fuse. Alright, now I won't do that again until I have a proper fuse in there. But it does appear that the backup wiring harness solved the issue. So there is something wrong with the wiring harness that's on there. Next step is basically to decide whether or not I'm rebuilding the wiring harness in less than a month, or if I'm just going to use this one. And if I am using this one, then I need to go pick up a couple of rolls of electric tape and wrap it all up, just like the old wiring harness, so that everything stays in place and looks better. But that's good. That's progress for moles. Good stuff. The next thing that I want to do today is finish up tearing apart the Suzuki. The bottom of the engine is just so encrusted with dirt and oil that I can't actually see the oil drain plug. I've already drained whatever was in the sub pump, like in the frame, but there's still going to be oil in the engine, hopefully. And I want to drain that and take a look at it and take the oil filter out and take a look at it, and also look at the filter, the screen between the frame and the engine to see if there's any metal debris, because that would be a good indication as to whether or not there's something wrong with the engine itself, or if the engine is in good condition the way I'm hoping that it is. So oil is the next step to really take a look at it, but I'm not going to be able to even drain the oil very well without pressure washing it. So I need to plug up the carb intake so that I don't go spraying a bunch of water into the engine, put a bunch of degreaser on there, let it sit for a bit, and then we can break out the pressure washer and give it a spray down. So that's the next step. You hang out with me, bub? Oh, he's a wiggle butt. I apologize if you're getting dizzy. In typical Alistair fashion, I kind of screwed these shots up and they didn't turn out the way I'd intended. First, I didn't use the second camera, which is why the tripod was there. And secondly, the 360 shot directly above the bike doesn't really show as much as I thought it was going to. I was trying to be creative, and sadly, this is the footage that I have. I will do better next time. Just gonna spray it with tire cleaner first because that stuff is pretty awesome, and then we'll also do a round of degreaser. All right, well, while that sits and soaks in a little bit before we pressure wash it, I just want to take the opportunity to kind of go over some of the things that I've pulled off of it and what the obvious concerns might be. So right off the hop, some of the big concerns are the light is obviously smashed, but I think I want to replace that with some kind of LED light anyway, so I'll look at what kind of housing would fit in that same spot, and then we'll get that replaced anyway. I'd still like to use the original, I think that's called a cowl. I'd like to use that, so we'll try and keep that. Another concern is that this is completely broken. So that's going to either require some serious glue and kind of reworking that original dash, which I would like to keep that, but we'll see what we can do. All of the mounts are busted or broken. The plastic has snapped seemingly ages ago. We'll see about replacing those. Taillights and the front indicators are all seemingly good. I have to actually open those up or hook them up to a 12 volt to see if they work properly. So we'll check that. What I didn't notice anywhere on it was an actual relay. So that's probably going to either be this guy here, or when it comes to the gas tank, I only have one of these bushings, so I'm going to need to replace that. The petcock on this guy is completely destroyed. We will get the exhaust all cleaned up and see if there's any holes or anything in it that need to be patched. The big concern obviously is the CDI. So this CDI is not for a DR350. As far as I know, my understanding is it's for a Yamaha, which is not really optimal. The back of this one is missing. So we'll see about just maybe sealing all of that in, and then if this works, and then just creating a custom mount to go on the back side of it, or we'll just replace it with something aftermarket. This was replaced, and I'm hoping that it's still a good piece. It's brand new, but hopefully they installed the correct one. Otherwise, most of the bushings need to be replaced, so the bushings and the foot pedals and stuff are all absolute trash, so those need to be replaced. Oh, this might be the relay. No, those just spare fuses. Okay, main fuse and spare fuse. Okay, so that's a little fuse box. So I'm assuming this is the indicator relay, but I'll look that up, figure it out. The wiring harness itself, Prometheus, do not step on my engine parts, you butthead. The wiring harness has been mangled, so we have to really inspect that and see if that's salvageable. Hopefully it is, and that won't be too big of a deal. Other than that, the other big concerns are just the bolts that are still in that I haven't been able to get out. So there's a couple of spots on the frame. So for example, this mount for the exhaust, that bolt is stuck. And you can see, I don't know if it'll pick it up on the camera, but it is actually cracked. The frame is cracked. So I'm going to need to remove this and then get a new piece tack welded, like tacked onto here, a new mount tacked on there. I got most of the other bolts out that I've at least tried so far. These are stuck. I've tried to extract both of those, but they don't seem to want to come out. So I'm going to have to work on that a little bit. I mean, that's pretty much it. Other things are just what you would expect to go. So a lot of these are very, very old and stuck. Over the next couple of days, I'm going to keep greasing up and applying penetrating oil to the front and rear axle to make sure that those can actually come off. And then the front fender likewise is a little, those bolts are a little worse for wear, at least the ones in the front, particularly the front left one there. So those might be a little bit of a pain to extract without snapping. There was one bolt that I snapped yesterday. Where is it? Right here. But technically all that holds on is the little toolkit right here, which I'm not sure if I'm going to be reusing anyway. So we'll see about that. What else? And then that seat. That seat has seen better days and needs to be replaced, obviously. And the battery is trash. As far as I can tell, the battery that was used in the job is a really, really junky, very, very cheap, like $30 battery, but it won't charge over 6 volts right now anyway. So that needs to be replaced in time. And And I still have to remove the rear brake caliper and the master cylinder back there to make sure that those are in good condition, which they appear to be. I just don't have a 14 mil spanner in order to remove it properly, because the front of these bolts here, right here and here, they just spin because they need to be held at the back before I can remove that plate, which then gives me access to where I need to remove where I can remove the master cylinder. And now the last thing that's kind of unknown, I know the shock bearings in the rear swing arm and stuff definitely need to be replaced. Like they should always be replaced anyway, you know, every once in a while, and I have no idea when they would have been replaced in here. But I also need to take that off and really inspect the rear shock and make sure that it's in good condition. And I'm going to assume that the front forks also need to be rebuilt, because they always do in time, but we'll see. This project, especially because the CDI is questionable, it's going to take time to either source that CDI anyway, or really get things together to get this bike on the trail. I want to do things correctly and not try and rush it. I definitely don't want to be rushing with a trail bike and then have something fall apart in the middle of nowhere and kind of be stuck dealing with it or facing the consequences of that. Yeah, that's just a quick rundown of the situation that I find myself in now that we have disassembled most of it. But I'd like to actually get to cleaning it and then draining the rest of the oil so I can have a good idea of what I think the inside of the engine is like, just based on the quality of the oil that comes out. So that's the next step.